So I'm delighted that for this week's message, I'm joined by Emily Williams, who is our Diocesan Disability Awareness Advisor. So thank you ever so much, Emily, for joining me today for this conversation. And as with all the conversations that I've been doing over these last few weeks during the pandemic and the lockdown that we've had in the UK, I've just started by asking people, how are you? And how are you and your family coping with all that's happening?
We are good. I think, like many households, that answer changes day to day. I think everyone has good days and tougher days where maybe you're more emotional or you miss family, or in our case, you have a 9-month-old that's getting a tooth and doesn't sleep. Yes, thank you for asking.
Well, I'm really pleased to hear that. As I've shared on these videos before, I have teenage children at home, which is a very particular challenge. But a 9-month-old is something else altogether. So I'm pleased to hear that you're coping okay.
It's
now,
good fun.
I introduced you as the Diocesan Disability Awareness Advisor. You've been doing that role for about a year or so now. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about what sort of led you to take on that role? It's a voluntary role in the diocese, but I know there was a particular sort of reason why you were particularly keen to take it on.
I didn't apply for the role because I felt like I had all the answers. Not at all. I would never claim that. But I did apply because I really care, and I'd love to learn and help facilitate as much as I can for people. So during my teens, I did lots of voluntary work through New Wine or just through church in inclusion in church or at New Wine. And that was really great. And I really liked what I learned from that and what I was exposed to there. So that led me to go on and do a degree in special needs, disability and inclusion studies, not the catchiest of titles. And for that, you had to do a dissertation. And I actually did my dissertation on inclusion in the church.
What sort of things have you been doing since you took on the role?
Okay. So initially I worked on establishing, I guess you'd call it a core team of people to be around me. So all of those different people, there's about 5 of us now, have expertise in different areas. I then spent and continue to spend and strive to do forever really, time in conversation with individuals with special needs or disabilities, with the families, with the individuals themselves, because I think it's really important that their voice is heard. I had quite a few training days planned that I was so excited about, but obviously they've had to be deferred. That's exciting, and I'd like to do more of those. And if people have a need that they think needs training on across the diocese, they can get in touch, and I can facilitate things like that. That'd be brilliant.
That's brilliant. Well, we're just delighted that you've taken on this role and that you've brought such commitment and enthusiasm to it as well. So thank you for that. Now, I've been struck over the last few weeks, I suppose, that I've seen a number of social media posts and newspaper articles which have suggested that we're all now experiencing something of what some people, at least with disabilities, have actually been experiencing all their lives. Namely, that sense of social isolation, the sense of being excluded from certain places, such as church buildings. And that's been a reality for some people for in some instances, all of their lives, as I say. Do you think that's true? And in what sense do you see sort of parallels between what we're all experiencing now and the experiences of those with additional needs?
Yeah, I really do think that's true in a lot of cases, which is really sad, but can be quite a good learning experience for, I think, as a country, we'd agree, this is really hard. Lockdown life is really hard. But that is the reality for quite a lot of individuals or quite a lot of families. They can't go to a restaurant, or they can't go to church, or they can't do all the things that you and I would just do without thinking about. And that's not 9 times out of 10, that's not because of their disability. That's because of societal barrier, if you will. And so, yeah, I do agree would be the short answer to that. And there, as you said, there's lots of things on social media. An example that brings to mind is Miranda Hart is using her social media platform at the minute, literally to what you've just said, to raise awareness of the fact that this is like lockdown life is normal life for individuals with ME, and how we can then learn from that and support from that. So I think as a network of churches, I think we should really use this time to realise actually we've got an end point. We might not know when that is yet, but hopefully at some point life will return to a new normal. We will get to go to a restaurant again, we will go to churches again, there'll be holiday club, there'll be school, there'll be work. So we have an end to look forward to. So actually what can we do as a network of churches to try and facilitate some sort of change so that we don't just go back to what was, and how can we facilitate and enable lockdown to end for everybody, and not just for the privileged, I guess.
Yeah, that's really significant, isn't it? And much for us to reflect on as we think of what it may look like when we emerge out of all of this, and in particular, that core Christian value of inclusion. And actually, how do we make sure that that everyone is included within our church communities? And just leading on from that as well, I'm also particularly aware that that we may be inadvertently introducing new forms of exclusion even at this time. So the whole rush to move church online, which has been great at one level, and it's been wonderful to see lots more people watching church services or interacting on Zoom church services. But of course, there's a lot of people out there as well who either may not be able to or don't want to engage with things online. So there's that sort of new sort of split, if you like, or divide between those who are interacting a lot socially online and those who aren't and feel themselves left out of all of that. But then also beyond that, even the whole thought of, as we do eventually reach that point of when we may be able to start to use our church buildings again. We don't know when that is at the moment, although some talk about it possibly being in July. But when we get to that point, I'm aware that there are some churches that will be able to do that perhaps relatively easily. They'll have lots of young volunteers who will be able to do the work of cleaning and the other sort of health and safety bits that will be needed. Whereas other churches, of course, won't have volunteers or others who can do that sort of work. So again, there'll be a split between different churches in all of that. So I'm just wondering, from your experience of working with people who have experienced exclusion, what do we need to be considering now, do you think, in order to be able to overcome something of these divides and make sure people do feel included?
When churches reopen, you mean?
Yeah.
I think for me, like I said previously, use this time to kind of not just fall back into what was, and really take the time to listen to individuals, listen to families, seek out those within your town or village or parish or whatever your area may be, and those that can't get to church for whatever reason, or don't feel like they'd be welcome in the building for whatever reason, be that rightly or wrongly, and listen and hear them and value them, and then take that away and reflect on that and think, actually, how can we make sure that inclusion is at the heart of our vision for our church family and for our Christian community, and accept that, that might take a bit of work in some instances. It might take a bit of flexibility, and things will have to change and evolve and continue to change as different people join the church. But try and see that as an excitement and be really positive about things like that. Because actually, as you said, inclusion is really essential to be at the core of our Christian values. And so how can churches make that part of their heart for their growth as church family, really? I think another really key thing to remember really is those of us that haven't received a letter to say that we need to stay indoors, or those of us that don't have any sort of additional conditions, we can leave the house the second they say, okay, you can go to your church building now. But some people won't be able to. Some people will still have to stay in for their own safety, or for their mum's safety that lives with them, or for their sister's safety that lives with them. And so I think it's really, really important to not forget about people that have to stay at home. You might have 96% of your congregation that can come back through the door, but that 4% is no less valuable. And I completely understand that in the busyness of getting back to whatever new life is and finding a new rhythm, that actually it might be really easy to focus on the 96%. So I guess I would like to voice the importance of not forgetting that those few that have to stay at home. And I'd really encourage people to continue streaming or using that online platform for their services. A lot of the SEND community rely on online church and have done for far before the coronavirus. And so that'd be really cool if they could connect with their local church as opposed to just whatever church happens to be streaming. Churches now have all had to learn how to stream or how to record, and I think that's amazing that everyone's done that. No one saw it coming. So continue, that'd be great. That'd be such an easy way to allow people to plug in. If you're streaming or using videos, really simple things like putting subtitles on all your videos enables that automatically enables the deaf community to be able to access your resources. Lots of small things like that as well that can make a really big difference.
Emily, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be able to talk with you and get your insights into this really important area in the life of the church. And I want to say that actually I've been enormously encouraged with the way the churches, even over these recent weeks, have adapted to very different circumstances, and have actually worked really hard to try and find ways of including people, and be very creative in their approach to that. There's always going to be more that we can do and more that we'll need to consider as circumstances change again. But I want to send out my thanks to all those watching this video, this message today, and to say that I continue to pray for you all as you continue to serve God and seek to grow God's kingdom here on earth. So thank you again.